Hey, Wise Rebels. I found myself this week sitting down with a piece of paper, responding to some really powerful questions in a very provocative new book that I've been reading called What to Make of a Life by Jim Collins. And I don't know why I decided to answer the questions, to be honest, because he was asking us to explore what he calls our encodings. So, what are the parts of us that we know just won't go away, that keep showing up over and over again? What do we know about them? He argues there are many, many more than we even have access to. But I started to write them down. I was about to teach it in a class, and I thought, Danielle, you need to do the work yourself. And a really surprising thing happened. So, in the midst of writing these things down, which were very clear to me and I've known about for a long time, I started to think about an idea that I've been playing with for a couple of weeks now that I can't seem to put down, that I just had this real sense did not match what I was writing on the piece of paper. And so, in the midst of kind of working out what these encodings were, I thought, what is it about this idea that I can't put down because it makes no sense? And let me tell you what the idea is for context, not because I'm about to do it, but to give you a sense of it. The idea circles around how do we create like a great big clothes swap exchange for kind of 16 to 24-year-olds who have cupboards full of still labeled clothes from places like Shein and Temu, where I feel we have so much problematic behavior going on. And if you know anything about me, I'm not a fast fashion guru. I'm not a retail merchandiser. None of these things are my thing. And yet I couldn't put this idea down. And so I started to map the idea on a piece of paper. And what I noticed was this fire was kind of growing inside me, and I was seeing opportunity to do all kinds of impactful things everywhere. And I thought, what is going on here? And so I went back to the piece of paper that was all about these encodings, this part of me that I understand is prevalent and core to who I am in the world. And suddenly I was able to name something really clearly that I have never been able to name before. And of course, it's connected to leaders changing things on the inside and how do we create impact. And what I saw was for almost the whole of my working life, I have been looking at how does the system operate in the way how are people behaving, how are they going against their values, how is power being used on them, or how are they using power in ways that are not even particularly aligned to who they are, and how are systems corrupting as a consequence. And my thing has been, how can I quietly, with nobody noticing, shift this thing in a different direction? How can I shift this thing in a different direction? I've always been doing it. It is my permanent contribution to say, this does not look great. I'm just going to quietly and subtly see if I can shift it in another way. So, of course, I'm not saying this is a quiet and subtle idea, but it matches that idea of here's a system that I feel is problematic. What is the opportunity to make a shift that might just move the giant ship that is fast fashion in a slightly different direction? And so here's the thing, because I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we all go out and create these great ideas. We all know there's so much that needs changing. Almost every system that we operate in, um, if you're in the Wise Rebel world, we'll be looking at and saying, we could do better than this. We could make more contribution to humans. We could stop doing some of these things that are not healthy for humans. We could stop behaving this way to excuse our profit margins, whatever that might be. And my experience has been, and I'm going to speak into a quote that might help you in a minute, that that always looks enormous. It looks enormous to change. And if we walk into rooms and start critiquing people or shouting that something needs to change, often it falls on deaf ears. People really don't want to be told. we're not doing the right thing for humans here, or culturally we find ourselves in environments where we are accepting certain things. And so what can often happen is either we throw ourselves at something and say, come hell or high water, I'm gonna try and push this through. I'm gonna use my personal might to push this through, and then we burn out and good people leave the game. And I don't want that. Even though I left it myself, I want us to stay in it for as long as we can. Or we look at the size of the problem, we say it's too much, the system won't tolerate the change, and therefore what I need to do is find a way to suck up some of the problems, find a way to resolve the cognitive dissonance I have inside me, and try to find things that I can do that make me feel good about myself. We're doing that everywhere. You don't have to be in large organizations to be doing it. We're often trying to adjust what keeps me safe, what can I get away with, all of those things. But I think part of the problem is we're looking at the enormity of the issue. So what then happens is we have very high expectations about what can be changed. And I'm a big fan of a guy called William Ury, who has been a negotiator for kind of terrorists and with dictators, done some incredible work in the world. And he says that the reason he sees activists burning out is that they have high expectations and high aspirations, i.e., that they think I can go hard at this for a very short period of time and something will change. And so hearts are broken because 2-3 years later, nothing has changed at the level they thought. And so this game is not worth playing. I will step out. If you even take like women's suffrage as an example, I was just reading a piece about that recently about two women who worked in that field for 20 years. We weren't talking about a 5-minute turnaround there. And so what we know is big change takes time. And what I know is the Wise Rebel way is a little bit different. The Wise Rebel way says shifting a tanker, shifting a system, shifting an organization, shifting a community, shifting a family by 1 degree, only 1 degree, changes the trajectory of the ultimate destination. And really that's at the heart of the Wise Rebel work. How can we get out of the idea that all change has to be massive and transformational and overnight, which is too overwhelming for most of us to even begin, and say, what is the thing I feel so strongly about that I am willing to step into the game and change it by 1 degree? I'm wholly aware that when I present to you some big idea about fast fashion, that sounds like I'm trying to push it more than 1 degree, but actually not. I know, because I've spent enough time with this idea now, that it's full of problems. I know it's going to be really difficult to do. And I know that if I buy into the idea, I can change the nation's behavior on buying from these countries, from these manufacturers that are operating in manipulative and highly unethical ways in all kinds of directions. That's naive. What I'm interested in is what can begin that just starts to shift the direction. And so here's the invitation. As you think about what is the 1 degree move that you would be willing to consider because it feels so important to you, the invitation is that this kind of Wise Rebel method, this way of subterfuging a little bit, requires a different way of leading, or a different way of showing up if you don't consider yourself a leader. It requires moving away from the idea that I need to get myself in some kind of approval queue for things and I need to kind of fight for resources. It requires moving away from the idea that I need to shout loud and proud about what it is we're creating. Because what it says is, how can we just move this ship in a way that means by the time the 1 degree shift is in motion, nobody has even really noticed. So there's no chance to stop it. It means playing with low expectations and high aspirations. And it means being willing to try new things, new behaviors, new practices, new ways of thinking. I don't believe we do that well alone. I think it's really hard to swim against the tide. It's hard to not have places where we can chew ideas over. The reason I changed what this crossing is about is because I recognize that in so many ways, the next 3 to 5 years and all of my future of work research backs this, many things are going to change and it is going to be chaotic. We are struggling to predict the end game. And as a consequence of that, all kinds of things are going to be tried. And all kinds of things are going to happen as a consequence of that that are great, and some things are not going to be great at all. If you're a parent, you can already see just how hard it is for a young person to get into the job market. You might have also seen that there are certain skills that are disappearing, and those individuals will enter the world of trying to find a new job lost. We will see that we will continue to make excuses for behavior that does what we call moral injury to all of us in order to, because that's the way it has to be done. I am not saying that we are going to create a revolution here. Instead, I am offering the idea that on the inside, 1 degree changes over long periods of time are profound. You only have to do a little bit of a research into navigation to see what can happen when you are taking a very long journey and you shift by just 1 degree. And so this crossing is about what can we shift by 1 degree in this particularly challenging time. I don't care what it is you've got your idea set on. I care that we come together, we create community, we create provocation, we create space for togetherness and not going it alone. We create some humor and some fun about what we're doing and some pride, but we hold on to these low expectations and high aspirations as a new way of thinking. You don't have to join the crossing to sit with the question, what could I participate in changing direction of by just 1 degree? What could I participate in? What is alive in me that I could just say, I have got 1 degree in me, just like everybody else has? Why do that? Because lighting the inner fire changes everything for us. It creates a willingness to show up in new ways. And when we do that with low expectation, but high aspiration, high hope about what's possible, we have a reason and a motivation to keep moving forward. And I don't care what it is. It could be a really small thing in your team, in your opinion, or it could be a huge thing that a 1 degree change would be monumental on. But the practice of learning how to think about 1 degree, of learning how to think about showing up in a different way to the way the mainstream is flowing, that practice is invaluable. I will share more in videos. I invite those of you who are feeling inspired by the crossing to reach out because I'd really love to have a conversation with you. We're going to begin in late July. But for now, can you get your head around the idea of a 1% shift? And if you can, where would you want to create it?